Hey, shalom, guys. My name is Will. Welcome to the channel. I have a guest with us, Metaphysics Mike. He might look familiar. It used to be called Michael Media, right? But you wanted to be confusing to people, so you changed your name to throw a monkey wrench at him. But dude, brother, it's good to have you back on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
If you guys want just to get a better understanding of Mike, why I appreciate him, go to my playlist, go to interviews. You were my first person I had on, man. That's why I think it also makes it cool to have you back on. You were the first person. And, we've been friends for a while, glad to have you as a brother, glad to have you as a friend, someone on here. We can throw ideas at each other. I appreciate you, man.
Well, hey, I appreciate that. I didn't know I was the first on your channel, but yeah, it's good to be back, to be talking. You've done some awesome interviews. I've always appreciated your content, and I'm ready to get into it. Let's do it.
Yeah, dude. So now one of my playlists I have is just bad theology. And, anyone who knows me, anyone knows anything about Mike, like, we are not Trinitarians. Now, it's not that we throw Jesus to the side, that he's a normal person. But when we look at what the Trinity is, what the Trinity says, Mike and I just feel like it goes against the Bible. And dude, it's so frustrating where we will hear these Christian apologists defend the Trinity either by basically denying scripture or like denying ecumenical councils. But that's also where the Trinity comes from. Yeah. So like they'll say you have to believe in the Trinity because it was decided at the ecumenical council. However, how I describe the Trinity also go against other ecumenical councils, but that's okay as long as we maintain this one. And it's just, you're cherry picking, you're being disingenuous. Do you either believe in this or you might believe in parts of it, right? Like I can say I can agree with parts of the Trinity, but I can't write off the whole thing and say I agree with it, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost like if someone was to give us 10 statements, 9 of those might be true, 110%. The 10th one is like, right? Can we sign off of it? No. Not that we disagree with everything, but it's like that one last part we don't agree with, so we can't sign off on it. And I feel like that's the same thing with the Trinity.
Yeah, totally agree. And, the reason why I think this is the case is because there hasn't ever been some unanimous agreement on what the Trinity is from the beginning. I mean, from the earliest descriptions of God really as a tri before it became a Trinity, right? That word's not even in the Bible. I mean, you could start with Justin Martyr, right? Or move on to Tertullian or others like Origen, right? Many of these characters would later become heretics by new standards that would be set. So really, it just depends on really what brand of Trinitarian you're speaking with. And I mean, from Latin Trinitarianism, social Trinitarianism, I mean, from Justin to Aquinas, okay, this has developed throughout the councils, the creeds, all the commentary by those Greek philosophers we call the church fathers, right? And I think that is why there's no way to really be consistent without it coming back to bite you in one way or another.
No, you're right. And it's getting to the point where it's just, and that's one thing too, like you brought up Latin and social Trinitarianism. I mean, there's so many, like even the Orthodox adhere to monarchical Trinitarianism, which to me, that kind of makes the most sense, but it's still like,
yeah, you still got the being eternally begotten and the obvious that if the Father is the only one who possesses a deity, how is he equal with the Son, right? Who doesn't? Like, there's still questions, but monarchical is probably one of the best. I'd agree with that.
Yeah, but again, it still like falls a little short, but it's getting to a point where it's like, as long as you believe in the Trinity, good for you. Like if you don't, you're screwed. But then it's like, okay, but then like, what is it? You go to these ecumenical councils and you're right. Everything was broken down. So like the first one, Nicaea 325, Jesus is God. Next one, Constantinople, God is not one God in one person. He's one in 3 persons. So like now they're incorporating the Holy Spirit. 451, Council of Chalcedon. Now Jesus is fully man and fully God. So obviously these beliefs weren't established. They were established way later. Everyone had different degrees, but now at those points, it's like you have to believe in this going forward.
Yeah,
And
and you know that. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to cut you. I was going to say, and you know that authority translated into many other conflicts. I mean, on through the Great Schism of 1054, right? The Filioque. You know, whether we add, and from the Son, in the Nicene Creed, like, I mean, there were other doctrinal disagreements about like the Pope and other things, but the point is that even once they had the councils, it still wasn't established on how to exactly interpret him, which led to the split of Roman Catholics versus Orthodoxy. So, so what you're saying is just unequivocally true,
yeah, it's just all interpretation, man. But we'll bring up the guest of honor tonight. It's Mr. Michael Jones from Inspiring Philosophy. It's yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with this guy. And honestly, every other Christian apologist, right? Like I think I speak for you too. These types of people, I look at them like my brother, but some of the arguments that they bring up, for one, they're not consistent, and two, they either go against the Bible itself to establish a point or an argument that was established at an ecumenical council, or they'll go against the ecumenical council and they'll go with what the Bible says. And it annoys me because, again, these are my brothers and sisters within Christ. And when they argue with anti-missionaries, like Tovia Singer, if they argue with Muslims or they argue with atheists, I sometimes think to myself, I'm just like, I'm cradling my head in my palms. I'm just like, oh, like the other team, the bad guys, are right and they're winning. Like, you're arguing this from a terrible standpoint. And it's like, I already know what they're going to say in response to it. Like just be honest. Why can't we just say that Jesus is the shaliach, the agent of God? If you are the agent of God, you are God, as in like the representative of him, right?
Yes.
You are the apostle. Jesus is called the apostle in Hebrews chapter 3, verse 1, just like his other apostles. So when Saul is going after the other apostles of Jesus, that's why Jesus goes to him in the book of Acts and he says, Saul, why are you persecuting
me?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And it's just like, why can't we just have this easy train of thought? And like you said earlier, these Greek philosophers, where Tertullian kept on his Greek philosophical sash and his turban, and he never let it go. He transition to Christianity, but all you're doing is accepting Jesus as your savior. You're still bringing your Greek ideas into the realm of Christianity, your Greek mindset. You're already reading the scriptures. So when you like go to Revelation, oh, you're going to be in the lake of fire. Oh, we have that with Hades. Hades is fire, and we're going to incorporate like those ideas into it. It's the same thing with the Trinity. Going all the way back of three deities going from Egypt to Babylon. Like, there's always three that represent the one Godhead. And again, we now have this within Christianity.
Yeah, I think the best example of this is the crown jewel of the Nicene Creed, which was the word that they used to describe the relationship between the Father and Son, and that is homoousios, right? Consubstantiality. I mean, there are scholars such as Christopher Stead who've cataloged every pre-Nicene use of that word, showing that really it was introduced to the larger Christian world through the Gnostics, and the Gnostics got it from Hermeticism. And so really, ultimately, I mean, it's the same story with everything. The Romans, the Greeks got their ideas ultimately from the Egyptians, right? So that is in Egyptian theology, consubstantiality. You don't find that in scripture, right? You don't find those concepts. The Hebrew people were not to think about God, to worship God, to engage with God at all, like the pagan nation surrounding them. And so I think right from the beginning, Nicaea, you have a textbook example of what you're saying is true. They adopted a total pagan theology, which from the Greeks who got it from the Egyptians.
Everything going down. so it's interesting. So part of my theology, and I really don't argue this with people, when it comes to the book of Revelation, just because, no one really knows, but it is interesting because it talks about like the animal with the seven heads. It says 5 were, one is to come. The 5 were, I equivocate that to Egypt, Babylon, the Medes and the Persians, the Assyrians, and the Greeks. 5 were, and then the one is Rome, and then obviously the kingdom is the one to come. But when we look at all of these, every previous main world power of the time has adopted what the previous one did and basically made it better. That's why Rome was such a threat. Like in Daniel, when it talks about like this beast, that's something I've never seen before, just because it's taken all the good things from Greek, which is taking all the good things from the Babylonians, and then the Medo-Persians, who took it from the Assyrians, who took it from the Egyptians. Everything to make a city and an organization great and wonderful. That's why Roman was almost perfect. And some people say the seventh world power is the United States. And yes, the United States is grand and excellent. I'm not comfortable to say that yet. I mean, it might be, I don't know. It might be the United Nations, but you see these, they take the ideas, and even us as the US, we've done that. But it wasn't until after Rome, like that's why we call it the Dark Ages, because they rejected everything that they learned and, got sick, and then they had to like relearn, oh, hey, they actually had some good stuff. Let's continue it. But yeah, it's just, passed down. It's everyone's sloppy seconds, basically, with this Holy Cerberus idea.
Yeah, right. So basically you're saying it's really not a crazy idea to say that, the Christians in the Greek Hellenized world would have been doing what everyone's always done, right, throughout history, which is adopt, amalgamate, sometimes appropriate certain things. For sure. It's the truth.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to read this real quick. Now this can be taken different ways, but this is Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. And this is the old King James version. This is the one version I had next to me. Beware lest any men spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of man, after the remnants of the world, and not after the Messiah. Right? Messiah never claimed to be God. Of course, there's the bad examples of John 1:1, John 8:58, John 10:30, but he never claimed to be, and Peter asked him, or God, Jesus asked Peter, who do you say I am? He says, you are the Christ, right? You're the Christ, the anointed one, the Messiah, right? The Pharisees, tell us now, are you the Messiah or not? It was never, are you God or not?
And many of the passages that there is some question, there's actually clarity. I think they provide clarity, right? So claiming to be the Son of God it was putting him in a way equal with God. The text actually says that, right? You hold against me because I call myself the Son of God, right? So those are key clarifications, which I think support that truth, right? He didn't really directly claim to be God. And even still, the word God, as you sort of mentioned earlier, has a semantic range, which can include beings other than how we think capital G, Most High God, right? And in the Hebrew language as well, both Elohim, Hebrew, Theos, and Greek. So, yeah, it's the truth.
Yeah. So, today, though, like I said earlier, we will be going over what Mike from Inspiring Philosophy said. You actually did a rebuttal to this. That's on your TikTok channel. Is it also on your YouTube, though?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So yeah, guys, please check out Metaphysics Mike. Watch his rebuttal to this. I thought you did really good. Now, but there's one thing he said in here that I screamed. I'm literally watching this on my phone. I just screamed. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to add this to my bad theology playlist. But I'm like, you know what? I want to bring you back on. You and I can talk about it together, and you can kind of reiterate some of your main points. And I know you've had a longer time to let this like season on you, so you can, give also a different take. But guys, he does Mike here, Metaphysics Mike, he does respond to Michael Jones in this, so please check that out. But I wanted to just go over this with you, and I don't know. So
let's do it. Let's check it out.
Yeah, let's go, man. Everyone wants to hear this. Yeah, let's go. All right.
Why doesn't the Trinity make sense?
All right, let's see what you got.
There's no way to logically conceptualize the Trinity in a form that doesn't commit a heresy or violate divine simplicity.
So, three problems here. One, divine simplicity is a luxury. It's not necessary for Christian belief, nor is it necessary to have the most coherent and parsimonious worldview. Many social Trinitarians have just outright rejected divine simplicity, and Latin Trinitarians have offered models where they show the Trinity is compatible with divine simplicity, like Thomas Aquinas, for example. Second, not being able to...
All right, I'm going to pause it right there real quick. He does the Dan McClellan. All right, let's see it.
Yeah. So here, listen, there's something that I wanted to say here. Let me pull this up. So I'm going to go the entire screen, actually. Or can I just do that? Single window, Chrome tab. Okay, so listen. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, how's that?
Okay, listen. So we're just going to go through a few different things. Okay, so here's something by Ryan Mullins. We all know Ryan Mullins. Okay, listen, what is divine simplicity? Right out the gate, the doctrine of divine simplicity says that God essentially lacks parts. Okay, now what I want to do now is switch. Can I just switch to a different tab? Oh, let me do that.
I don't think so. I think you have to take the whole thing down.
All right, that is totally fine. Boom. We'll go to the next one. All right, now watch this. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, so this is the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. All right. Divine simplicity is central to the classical Western God. Simplicity denies any physical or metaphysical composition in the divine being. Okay, so are we catching this? Are you getting what this is? What is divine simplicity? Okay, now let's go to, we're going to pull up this one, gotquestions.org. Listen, I know a lot of people, crap on Got Questions, but I mean, millions of people use them a year. Okay. Divine simplicity is a concept of God, does not exist in parts, but is wholly unified. Okay. So are we getting the picture? The point is that one of the first things you learn about divine simplicity is that God is not composed of parts. And more specifically, early writers in Christian history, like Irenaeus, when they describe God as a simple being, that's what they were talking about. Okay, to them, they were speaking against like polytheism and the idea that God was any type of physical substance that could like degrade or, decompose, fall apart, etc. So when he comes in with this response, like, oh, well, divine simplicity is a luxury, I'm like, he knows I'm talking about partialism, that God is not composed of parts, right? But he comes out the gate saying, well, it's not necessary. So to me, as you'll see in my response, to me, that was unclear. That was an unclear response. There's no way for me to say he doesn't know that I'm talking about the first thing you learn about divine simplicity, right? It is certainly many other things, such as the identity hypothesis about whether God has distinct attributes or if everything in God is equal to himself and etc. So right out the gate, I felt like he is not being clear. Like, what does that even mean? Okay. He does not believe it is a luxury, the idea that God's not composed of parts.
He said that, and it's just... exactly. You're not being clear. What do you mean by it's a luxury? Like you can or don't have to believe in this is like, and he brought up other views of Trinitarianism, of social Trinitarianism, and he said Latin Trinitarianism, and it's just like it still goes against the model of the Trinity in some way or form. You have to. It's either all in one or none at all. So again, we're bringing up it's just frustrating because it's again, inspiring philosophy's idea is just believe in the Trinity, just accept it, don't think about it, don't question it. And that answer with divine simplicity, that was annoying.
I probably should have just said there's no way to logically conceptualize the Trinity in a form that doesn't commit a heresy or necessitate partialism. That's probably what I should have said, because then there would have been no way it could have been misunderstood. But yeah, in our back and forth, divine simplicity became a red herring. It wasted a bunch of time, and to me it was actually quite frivolous. It's just that God's not composed of parts. All right, that's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah. All right. Let's hear his point. His second point.
All right.
Conceptualize the Trinity is not a problem. Four-dimensional space is mathematically coherent and could exist somewhere, but we can't conceptualize it. That doesn't make it incoherent or wrong. And third, analogies for...
Hold on. Okay, that I thought also was a stupid example, talking about like a fourth dimensional, because now we're like, and this is why I brought up the verse in Colossians about a philosophical idea, because I think Mike also, along with other Trinitarians, like they'll use the concept of like a fourth dimension, or like the number infinity,
quantum physics, all that types of stuff.
Right. Just because we can't wrap our mind around it doesn't mean it's impossible. And it's like, to a degree, yes. That's true. But then why can't I just say, well, God is one as a Unitarian, and if you can't get it, well, that's just the philosophy around it. Right? Like, why, or how about this? How about this? Why can't God be four? Why can't there be a fourth person of the Trinity that's never mentioned within the scriptures, we have no recollection of? Like, why are we now limiting God to three? Like, why not a quadrinity? Why not an infinity or whatever? but like, seriously though, like if we're really going to look at this and take it head on, why do we then stop at three if we're going to throw this? We can't fully understand it. Well, we should throw a fourth person in there, because what if there's a four and we're excluding that, and that other person?
Yeah, well, to me, the issue here was that it's my understanding that the fourth dimension is not logically impossible. That's what I'm arguing the Trinity is. Because if you can't conceptualize it in either through modalism or partialism or even Aquinas relational identity, all these different examples break down into a heresy or partialism. Okay, so then how do we know like how it's described as real? How it literally defies the very words we use to describe it. Like when we say Jesus is fully and equally God, like those are words which are essentially metaphors drawn from material objects. But the moment you try and flesh out what fully and equally means, well, then now you're a heretic, right? So to me, that's why this isn't an equivalent example, because the fourth dimension isn't logically impossible, right? So it's not merely that it's just coherent, but that it actually must be logically possible. And I don't think the Trinity is.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. We can obviously we'll go more into it because there's kind of more I want to say, but it will kind of go with like the video. But also too, like one thing that when I watched this, it came to my mind is, God is not this like thing that it's impossible for us to comprehend. Like, is it impossible to fully comprehend God? Like, I would say yes. Like right now in our imperfect states, I think it is impossible to fully 100% comprehend God. But like he makes himself so well known, like throughout the scriptures, where he talks about like, my right hand, you read Psalms 90 and he compares himself to like as a mother hen puts her wings out to protect her young. There's so many metaphors that describe it. And, you're a dad and I'm a dad. Like we have an unconditional love for our kids, even though they do stupid stuff. We will always continue to love them and want the best. So we can understand where he comes from. Obviously his love for us is greater than our love for our own kids, which is almost crazy to think about, but he gives us so many clues to like understand him, where it's not just this like infinite thing that like we'll never be able to understand, or like it's totally impossible to comprehend even anything he says or anything even about who he is or anything like that. And we even see a lot of those attributes within Jesus himself. you know? So that always just like bothered me.
Yeah, well, like there's this misunderstanding about God as being totally beyond us, because I totally agree he is, right? I mean, in his power, in his knowledge, in his presence, right? Totally beyond us. The top supercomputer, whatever you want to say, he's greater than it. No problem. The issue, however, is that in virtually all theology, every theist out there in either Judaism, Islam, Christianity, you name it, believes that there are still things God cannot do. I mean, even from a Christian perspective, you could say God cannot sin. That's what the Bible says. God cannot lie. All right. But even in a more fundamental sense, you wouldn't say like God can create rocks so big he can't lift them. He can't create a married bachelor, a square circle, right? A stick with only one end, right? Like these things are actually logically impossible. So when we say God is omnipotent, he's all powerful, he can do anything, we mean he can do anything which can be done. This is ironclad, okay, in theology. There's no debate really among scholars on whether God is limited by logical possibility or not. He is, okay? So that becomes a problem coming back to this, his response is because when he's going to appeal to the fourth dimension, well, the fourth dimension is not logically impossible. The Trinity, as you've described him, is. You see, that's the problem here.
Hey, you just got to have faith.
It's just that's just an appeal to mystery, right? And I can't falsify mystery. That's not evidence, right? To me, an appeal to mystery loses this debate. But
right. All right, let's hear his third now. I'm gonna rewind just a tad. Okay, there we go.
Can conceptualize it. That doesn't make it incoherent or wrong. And third, analogies for the Trinity are not necessarily heresy if they're used properly, which we'll get to later. But more importantly, denying the Trinity is actual heresy.
Like if
Okay, so right there. So he'll go into this whole springboard bullcrap thing. But okay, right there though. Lost Mike.
No.
Right there though. He says denying the Trinity is actual heresy. Now, obviously, we can't ask him this, but why is it heresy? Well, it was established at the ecumenical councils. Like, that's what he's going to have to say, right? Okay, it was established at the ecumenical councils. Ecumenical councils are it's dogmatic. It's dogmatic. Okay, so we have to listen to the ecumenical councils, guys, because the Trinity said so, and it's heresy to go against it. So it's heresy to go against the ecumenical councils, essentially, right? So moving forward now through the rest of this video, going against an ecumenical council, guys, is a heresy because the Trinity was established at the ecumenical councils. Does that sound good though? Like,
of course. I know, it's just so crazy because I know what he's about to say next, and it's just wild, like how this is even real life.
Yeah,
So I agree. The council's authoritative. Okay, denying the Trinity is a heresy. All right, let's see what he's got to say next.
Yeah, absolutely. All 7 of them. No skipping. No, look, all scripture. So. I'll just use the Protestant version. All 66 is all authoritative, just as all 7 are authoritative. Let's not cherry pick, Michael Jones. All right, let's go.
I said God is 3 in 1, like water can be a solid, liquid, or a gas. This is a heresy of modalism because they don't believe that the persons are modes or manifestations of God. They believe that they are fully and equally God.
Yes, if you say God is like water, that would be the heresy of modalism. But to refer to William Lane Craig, if you're only using this as a springboard to show how something can be 3 in 1, that's not heresy, because you're not saying the Trinity is like water. You're just using the analogy of water as a springboard to show how something could be 3 in 1.
All right. I don't know about you, but I have never heard the term springboard ever used. So I'm like, okay, cool. I've heard a new term now to allow heresy into describing the doctrine of the Trinity. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Oh, this is crazy. Okay. Because he just said that saying God is like water is heresy. Okay. And that's an appeal to this authority right through the councils, right? But yet, we can use water as a springboard to show that something is three in one. Like, is that what we Unitarians need? We just need something that's three in one. No, the question is, how can God be three in one? How can you maintain that the persons are truly distinct individuals while also saying they're co-equal, co-eternal, and consubstantial, and there only be one God? You've said the person is distinct and the person is God 3 times. If that's not tritheism, then I'm not sure what could be. And so to me, it's like wholly unnecessary to even use it as a springboard. Like, it offers no value. Like, that's why in my response, I sort of joked about it, because he's basically saying, like, God's not like water. But I mean, he kind of is like water if you use it only as a springboard. Like, listen, he either is like water or he's not. And if he's not, bringing in water as a springboard, an analogy for anything, is just to mislead you about what they actually believe the Trinity is.
Yeah, and I get his point in a way. He's trying to show how something can be three in one. But listen, the Star Wars movies are three in one. You had the main trilogy, 4, 5, and 6. That's the trilogy right there. Then you have like from the 90s and the early 2000s. Like, those are a trilogy. So those are like 3 operating under the one Star Wars. Like, even like, I remember even taking a marriage class, and I remember, dude, my wife looks at me and she pointed out, and I rolled my eyes. Like, there was this marriage book class we were doing. It had a triangle with God on top, and then the husband, like man and woman, right? And this, she's obviously alluding to like the Trinity triangle, and I rolled my eyes. Yes, we are also one with God, and our wife. We all become one. We see this in Genesis. A man will leave his father and mother and join his wife and be one. We see we see the concept of two becoming one, but again, like we talked about earlier, how the Trinity was then to be defined goes through all these ecumenical councils, all these revisions, and whenever they come up with one thing, it's like arguments start to come up. So we got to try to fix it again. We got to try to fix this one, fix this, and just for everyone listening too, when we talk about modalism, because I know a lot of Trinitarians will hear that idea of, solid, liquid, and gas with water, or like how we are, like, I'm a plumber, I'm a husband, and I'm a father. Same with you. You can have 3 titles. Now, that idea was invented by a man named Sabellius, which became known as Sabellianism, where God is one, and like the one is being identified. It's like switches in and out, which commonly known as modalism, or like oneness theology. But yeah, I don't know. Just earlier, he says that denying the Trinity is heresy. Look, why do we know it's heresy? Because the Ecumenical Council said it. Well, the Ecumenical Council of Constantinople said that Sabellius is wrong. God is not one in one; he is one in 3. So you cannot use that as an analogy. And yeah. I think you've even seen the Luther satire video with like the 2 Irish guys. Where like,
yes, that's modalism, Patrick. Yeah.
That's modalism, Patrick. Like, Patrick. He's like, what? Oh, that's the theory of, and he breaks it down even. You need to be consistent with your doctrine of the Trinity, because now what inspiring philosophy is showing is, look, guys, just believe in the Trinity, and really, we'll iron that out later, but you just believe in it. Right?
Yeah. So to me, the problem here is that what they are doing now, what people in IP's camp, has always been this way historically, which they're not just saying, hey, this is how we think God exists. And they create arguments and they, create a good case and labor for you and love and like, hey, I think this is the truth. Here's why. And all right, we disagree. Okay, love you, brother, whatever. No, these differences, which at times are purely conceptual, have been the reason for massive church splits, have been the reason for literally putting people to unalive. Okay, these are serious. The way that they treat people, the type of pride and arrogance surrounding these things. So sure, I could just sort of be like, yeah, I see where you're coming from. No, what follows this doctrine is unjustified divide. It is people being divisive. And I mean, if it's not analogous and you want to take your belief and use it as a reason to cast me out of the church, to condemn me to hell. Now we're in a different subject. No, you give me an exact example. Okay, I want to know exactly how this works. If you can't do that, well, then you're appealing to mystery. You don't know. God's not like water. God's not in parts. What is he? I don't know. Okay, that's not a winning argument, though. You're just appealing to mystery. And even the example you mentioned earlier about Adam and Eve becoming one is a perfect example. I just talked about this in a video I released today where I respond to God Logic in a street debate about the Trinity. He says the same thing. Well, Adam and Eve are one in their two persons. It's like, hold up. The problem is not they are one in two persons. The problem is that we count Adam and Eve as two human beings, plural, okay? But the persons in the Trinity are not three gods. They are one God. So that's not analogous. The persons in the Trinity are not one, like Adam and Eve are one. So all of that's just a bait and switch to try and justify the Trinity when they can't. And again, I feel like I would feel differently about this if they had grace, if they were chill, right? If they had the love of Christ in their heart. But no, they're going to like cast you out. And to me, that's a problem. You need to show the receipts. And if you can't, then you need to tap out. Okay.
No, dude, I agree with you too. In the apocryphal book of Second Esdras, chapter 4, it's one of my favorite. It tells the story of Ezra wanting to like get a better understanding of God. So he talks to the angel. The angel gives him like 3 riddles, and he's not able to answer the riddles. And he then says, well, if I were to give you riddles regarding like these 3 things that you have not experienced, your response would have been to me, I've never experienced those things, so how can I like answer that riddle? But I gave you riddles on things that you have experienced. So if you can't answer something that you have experienced, how can you understand God whom you have not experienced? And it's a really powerful chapter. So like we won't be able to, like I said earlier, we can't fully understand God at this time right now, which, it's fine. As you alluded to, I mean, every religion's on board with that. Now, concerning that though, if someone was to say like, look, you know what, I think God is 3 in 1 because like, let's just say Jesus is called God, and like in John 1:1, let's just, they take it at face value. Then Jesus says he will send him a helper. I view that as the third person. I can't explain it though, but it's just something I believe in. Like, I'm kind of in your boat. Like, I really don't care. I have friends who are Mormons. I have friends who are Jehovah's Witnesses. I have friends who are Catholic, who are Orthodox, who are even Jewish.
I don't think we're saved by our perfect airtight Christology. No.
Yeah. So like if someone and I have a lot of friends who are Trinitarians, but they also know not to like mess with me on the Trinity. Cause like, I think like they're afraid to, like, I'm comfortable believing in this. I don't want like someone else to like come in and hit me with a whole bunch of stuff that I can't answer. And I look silly and foolish, but like, I really don't care. But like, I agree with you too. Like, I mean, if this is what you believe in, like, cool, fine, whatever. Like there's someone that you and I know who is going to be a doctor probably in a few months. I'll get his PhD, but he agrees with partialism. So here we have an individual who's going for a PhD within, I can't remember if it's theology or philosophy. But like he will argue for partialism. And he even says the heck with ecumenical councils. Like, we don't care. Like, sure, I believe in it, but I also believe to describe the Trinity, you have to break it into parts, is partialism, which, is heresy. But,
it solves so many problems though. It really does. I know exactly who you're talking about. You're talking about In Philosopher's Garb, right? James Agnew. And
Yeah.
I love a ton of his content. He, I've said before, is really some of the only people out there making it possible for Unitarians to change their position, because he's actually addressing the problems, right? And he, I think for the most part, man, he's got a spirit of love. He, like all of us is, or all of us should be, is humbled in knowing how much we don't understand and how much we don't know, and how really we need to put our faith in Christ and live righteously. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what
Yeah.
Christianity is about. It's about, like, not your ability to profess the mysteries of the Trinity, okay, which is absolutely what it's being made about, okay, in these types of engagements, okay. No, it's truly about living like Christ. It's about living holy, righteously, the way, the walk. And I think that's the substance, right? And that's why I spend so much time talking about these things. Because, man, I just wanted to learn more about God. But what I got was thousands of years of extra biblical tradition that
Yeah.
just sucks the life right out of you. And before you know it, you think you justify yourself by your belief in the Trinity. Like, stuff is ridiculous to me. And that's why they need to be torn down, so that the one single true God can be lifted up. And hopefully we can get back to what matters,
I think that's why even a lot of modern scholars like are kind of moving, like they say they believe in the Trinity, but like how they describe it, and like they'll even say like, I disagree with the ecumenical councils, and I don't think, like, a lot of the scholars I've talked to, for one, they're very generous towards me. Like, I'll tell them like, I hold more of a view of like Dr. Dustin Smith, Dr. Dale Tuggy, or Dr. Stephen Nemesh. I'm more Unitarian. They're like, oh no, they're like, oh no, trust me, I get why you're Unitarian. Like, I get it, makes sense. Cool. Like, they don't care. But it's those ones who are on this app that condemn you to hell for not believing in a Greek philosophical idea that has developed hundreds of years after the disciples and everything like that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But all right, we'll go on to his next thing.
Must appeal to mystery and say it's beyond human comprehension. And for this first reason, the Trinity does not make sense.
So being beyond human comprehension does not mean something does not make sense. As I said earlier, four-dimensional space is beyond human comprehension, but it mathematically is coherent. And as C.S. Lewis has noted, God is greater than us and will always be beyond human comprehension. I doubt we'll be able to ever fully understand God. So why would we reject the sacred and orthodox doctrine of the Trinity just because it's beyond human comprehension? Some aspects of God will always be beyond human comprehension.
Classical Trinitarianism.
Okay. I know were you able to hear a little bit of that? Or?
Yeah. No, I'm listening. Sorry, I'm adjusting some things. Yeah, listen, I agree with him on that. Of course, God in some ways is beyond our comprehension, but that does not mean that God himself or what he does is logically impossible. Like, if you told me to multiply 857 million times, 32, I probably couldn't do that in my head, right? You could give me an equation that's probably just totally beyond my comprehension. I don't know the letters, what they mean, the signs, how you actually, execute it, the order in which you do things. Like, it could be beyond us, but give me a calculator and I'll make it happen, right? It's still possible. The issue, again, is that they are trying to tell us that the persons of the Trinity are fully and equally God. The persons are fully and equally God. Then they also say the persons are distinct. Okay, so they've given full deity and distinct personhood to these entities. And that naturally leads to tritheism, that they're three gods. And the one thing in this video he didn't respond to was the part where I mentioned, even if it is belief in one God, it's still virtually identical to polytheism in practice, because you're engaging with three different entities that you don't believe are each other. Yeah, I mean, they literally have different roles in the Trinity, like in perichoresis and the mutual indwelling. Like, it couldn't be more clear that the Trinity is in fact tritheistic. theistic. And I mean, there's certainly debate about what these terms exactly mean: monotheism, polytheism. Dale Tuggy sets forth, I think, probably a better term, which is monotheistic polydeism. It gets more intense. But like, besides that, I think it's still clear that if we are to understand God, if we understand him in the sense of a trinity, we will not understand him. It's like it literally cannot be understood, because all the options on the table are heresies or necessitate parts. Okay, so there again, the clear distinction between what is possible and impossible, right? Logically impossible. So I agree with him, but I feel like it does not address the core issue.
Yeah, he doesn't. And it's, okay, so in the very beginning of the video, to not believe in the Trinity is heresy. But then he's quoting from who was it? The Chronicles of Narnia person.
C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis, yes. He quotes C.S. Lewis, and like, we will not be able to fully understand God, everything like that. Okay. Like, again, though, if you want to say God is 3 in 1, whatever, and if you want to appeal to mystery and it's beyond our comprehension, sure, whatever, fine, like, but if you're going to say then this is heresy not to believe in this, so it's heresy not to believe in a mystery, it's heresy to just believe in no evidence whatsoever, like, really?
That is the same religious spirit the Messiah spoke against in the Pharisees. Bank on it. Okay, that is exactly. You see, because this stuff, just like the verse you mentioned, vain philosophies that depend upon the traditions of men. Okay, what ends up happening? People start to assert their philosophical understanding above the substance of their faith, which it's actually quite unrelated to these types of things. Like, that is a religious spirit, okay, that leads to ideas of self-justification, self-righteousness, and it overshadows all the important things. So I didn't mean to cut you off there, Will, but like, do you agree with that? Would you say like there is totally a religious spirit surrounding this doctrine?
I mean, it's a philosophical one, and that's like, I've interviewed Dr. Ryan Mullins. I'm a fan of him for one, honestly, and for one, the biggest thing is he is so polite to me. He's so generous of me. He honestly, after I had an interview with him, I think we spoke for like an hour off camera, just talking theology. Like, he is such a cool guy, and I've told him, and I think I even mentioned this when I did his book review, like, I'm not a fan of philosophy. Philosophy is a bunch of BS, because it basically allows anything to happen outside of the realm. But then from the philosophical, anything philosophical that you establish as dogma, you have to believe in this, or else, like, you're screwed. And to me, that's stupid. But I'm a fan of Dr. Ryan Mullins. I like, it's very interesting with him. But he's also like, look, I don't know, like, I just kind of what I think. I respect someone like that. But again, this is heresy to deny the Trinity, but we will never understand the 3 in 1. Like, we can't comprehend it. But if you don't believe in it, you're screwed. Like that's essentially what IP here is saying, and it's stupid. It is so
manipulative.
It is. It's literally like, I feel like what the Catholic Church has done through the Crusades and the Spanish Inquisition. But obviously now you can't run around and kill people, but you're just going to guilt trip them and threaten them. Like, look, dude, if you don't turn to this and like the Trinity, and believe that God is 3 in 1, like, you're so effed. It's not even funny.
Yeah, what I think it is, I thought a lot about this. So listen, one of the biggest problems in the time of the Bible, the New Testament that we read about, is that the Pharisees really put themselves in like sort of an intermediary position between the people and God. Now, granted, there is some justification to the priesthood as our mediators, mediating on our behalf, right? And how on the sacrifices in the temple, like, I'm not to like speak against those things. However, I do believe that Yeshua revealed that they had added on to that standard, and they added so much that it would be a burden that nobody could carry. Okay, and they missed the core issue as well. Like, hey, clean the inside of your cup first, right? Then the outside, and all the different traditions of men, the traditions of the elders, as it would say, and I believe it's Mark chapter 7. So, okay, what does that do? Well, what it does is it makes them an extra authority in your life when really God should be that authority. You see, so I believe that as the Roman church began to establish itself in its authority, you see, it actually needed something that would make people fall into that same trap, which is now we don't just answer to God, or I just can't read the Bible and understand it myself. Now I need them to tell me what is the truth, right? Well, how do I see this, right? And so that puts them in a standard in your life that I think only God should be in. And so I think really that's probably the core drive here, is that they just wanted to assert their authority, and they needed people to submit to that authority. And to do that, they needed something that was based on authority, right? Like it's not based on being able to comprehend it. It's not based on it, being logical or scriptural. It's based on their authority. Okay, like you can't even understand the Bible without the wisdom imparted to us by the church fathers. That's really how these people view it. So that's what I think has really gone on. They're just doing the same old act that we read about in the New Testament. It's just taken a different form.
It is. But let's hear your response and then how IP responds.
And teaches that the persons are distinct from each other. Jesus is not the Father, and the Father is not the Holy Spirit. And yet each person is said to be fully and equally God by themselves. Using a simple logical argument, if the persons are fully and equally God, and the persons are distinct, therefore you have three distinct gods by necessity, because the persons are God, and they are distinct from each other.
The problem is you're assuming it's logically incoherent for a mind to be three persons. But humans have already come up with logically coherent examples where a mind is multi-personal, and this was done entirely divorced from talk around the Trinity. I've used this example before, but look at Moon Knight.
Okay, hold on. So again, this is annoying to me because he is now going against the Sixth Ecumenical Council of what is it called? Monolithism.
Monolithism.
Yeah, right. Okay. And this idea of the one mind versus like the one will, it's the Trinity states that it's one mind and one will, where Orthodox who agree with the ecumenical councils, and same thing with Catholics, they will say, even because I'll ask them, what about the verse where Jesus says, not by my will but the will of like him who sent me, or not my will but your will be done, right? Like obviously it's two different wills. No, he doesn't mean that literally. It's the same will. It's just the human nature is now conflicting with like the divine nature. Like they have to invent that, but that's not what it says at all. Jesus clearly says, like, Father, if this, cup, if you can pass this cup from me, cool. If not, I'm still going to do it because, I want to please you and do what's best for you. But, he's basically saying, I know it's coming. Like he even in Luke, it even says that he sweats blood, which is actually, I found this out, that's actually a true condition, that you can actually sweat blood. If you're under enough stress and anxiety, you can actually sweat blood. So when I think it's in Luke that says that he sweat blood. I take that as literal because he knew how much, but he's not here to do what he wants. He's here to do what the Father wants, right? So again, he has his own mind. He has his own will to do that. So I agree with inspiring philosophy here that you could argue like two minds. This Moon Knight, if anyone's not familiar with it, it's more like an avatar, which again goes back to Sabellianism, where you have like the one avatar and the minds rotate through the one. So you're committing a heresy, and then you're also it's very frustrating, you know.
Yeah, yeah. There's many problems with it. In fact, I'll let him continue. Let's hear the other things he's got to say before I'll give you why I think this is just a terrible example.
Okay, and then just let me know when to pause it then.
Okay.
Because I think this is the part where he talks. Hold on, what 306? I think he talks for almost the rest of it.
So. All right, just listen to the points of his claim, and we're going to come and ask if they actually do represent the Trinity. All right.
Who is supposed to have dissociated identity disorder, but he doesn't really have that, because if you have that disorder, you're one person who switches between different alters. But Moon Knight is three distinct persons who exist together simultaneously. Mark is not Stephen, Stephen is not Jake, and Jake is not Mark. Yet they all exist together in the mind of Moon Knight and can talk with one another. Yet even though the three are distinct, they are all equally Moon Knight, and they are three persons of one mind. Look at the movie Inception. The main character, Cobb's wife, passed away, but he generated a person of her who exists in his mind.
Okay, so listen, I have 6 specific things that I think render that example terrible. All right, just an absolute failure. But before I get to those reasons, I just want to point out, let the record show that Moon Knight is a fictional character. Okay, he does not actually exist. Okay, is that wrong? Is he not a fictional character? Does he really exist? No. Okay, so we should just start right there. Okay, now let's compare this to the Trinity. Okay, number 1, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are distinct persons or hypostases, but they share this one essence or ousia. Okay, this means, as we've said, that each person in the Trinity is fully God. Okay, but yet they're not separate beings. Okay, Moon Knight, okay, has dissociative identity disorder. He said, like, in his second response, it's like he almost denied that. But in the show, he has DID. Okay, and this means that his various identities that he mentioned, Mark Spector, Stephen Grant, Jake Lockley, these are psychological manifestations within a single human mind. They do not share an independent existence like the persons in the Trinity. Secondly, because of this, his identities really are more like aspects of a single human being, like unlike the Trinity, okay, which the different persons, like they don't coexist as fully separate persons with equal power and authority in Moon Knight. It's truly not the same. All right. And the third reason I think is really just in their relationship to each other. Okay. Because the persons in the Trinity also like exist in this perfect eternal unity. Right. The identities within Moon Knight, however, struggle with a lot of internal conflict. They totally lack unity. Right. Like he says, oh, well, they can have conversations within themselves. Like, okay, like, do they like, but they have one mind? Like, is that how this works in the Trinity? Like, please, in Moon Knight, his different personas don't always work together. They are like often at odds and unlike, right, the harmonious relationship in the Trinity. The fourth reason I think is related to something you had pointed out after we paused it the first time, right? Which is that Orthodox Trinitarianism rejects modalism. The idea that God is one person who just appears in different forms. He keeps saying that Moon Knight is three persons in one mind, but his identities are interchangeable. Okay, like maybe he can have a conversation in his own mind, but he's only playing one of those characters in his physical body. Okay, so they are interchangeable. That is far more like modalism. Okay, Moon Knight. Like each one can take control of the body at different times. So you understand what I'm saying, right? The fifth reason I think that this is a pretty terrible example is that all three persons in the Trinity, right, are equally divine, fully God. They don't have like any hierarchy in essence. But Moon Knight, like, he's just a human with DID. And sometimes he's empowered, by the Egyptian god, Khonshu. But his identities remain human constructs rather than divine persons. Like, it's totally just not the same. It is really not the same. And lastly, each person in the Trinity is like fully conscious and aware of the others, right? But it's my understanding that even in the fictitious story, okay, his different personalities often lack awareness of each other, and leading to confusion, blackouts, and psychological distress. Okay, so I think that the Moon Knight example, I mean, it's truly just a fictional portrayal, which I mean is essentially a mental illness, folks. Like that's what the story is. Like, it's beyond me that this would even be used to try and prove one thing. But as you'll see here in this video, he acknowledges that all the things that I'm saying, or one of them, if not all of them, are true, because he'll say, well, this isn't a perfect analogy because all analogies aren't right. Well, okay, if it's not a perfect analogy, well, then you have not solved the problem of how the distinct identities can be maintained while giving them each the status of consubstantial, right? So that, I mean, that's pretty much the gist. Terrible example. He's done this with other creators. Danny, the atheist, had like Danny's conversation with him about Moon Knight. He got him to say that IP essentially, I guess, rejects classical logic at some point. He doesn't even accept logic. So, I mean, everything that I'm saying might as well be thrown out the window, because he can just say, well, I don't agree with classical logic. Okay. And then, like, what are we even doing here? Like, this example, again, I think fails. I don't even understand how this is a real thing.
Well, so I thought that was weird too. You're using an example from a comic book to show how there can be like three minds within the one, which again, the three different minds, three different wills, that goes against Trinitarian doctrine. It's one mind, one will. It's all together. That's what bothers me. And then if we're going to say, if he's going to use the example and open up the can of worms of, just as Moon Knight can do this, something from Marvel, like, okay, well, what about Thor? Is there another god of thunder that's a few thousand planets away? Are we going to have a giant purple guy come to Earth in a few hundred years? Is that going to be what Revelation's all about? Like, well, it's in, Marvel, like, what else? So it's just, I agree with you. It's stupid.
It's unbelievable. It really makes no sense to me. I can't even believe that this is a thing, but.
And honestly, this just shows that it's like he's just reaching. As long as he can get something that has the number 3 correlating to the number 1,
yeah,
he'll honestly use it, And it's interesting too, because just as when Jesus died, even the Nicene Creed talks about, he died, buried for 3 days, and then he was raised up, by God. What about Moon Knight? What if Moon Knight died? All 3 persons would cease to exist. That would again bring in the idea of modalism.
Yeah.
Not, just as I'm a plumber, I'm a father, and I'm a husband. You eliminate me, all 3 are gone. But God raised him from the dead. And even that is even a salvation issue in Romans 10:9. You have to believe that Jesus died and that God raised him from the dead. Like that is a salvation issue. So if the one person that has the 3 minds or 3 identities, whatever, died, so then either God fully died and then God wouldn't be able to resurrect him, or kind of like we talked about earlier of partialism. You have to agree with that, but then I don't know why IP just doesn't go with partialism. Like, he's already rejecting parts of the ecumenical councils and he's cherry picking what he wants. Why not just be a partialist?
So listen, he's kind of a chameleon at times. I like a bunch of the work IP does, particularly in defending the reliability of the Gospels. I think he does a pretty phenomenal job. But in terms of like the Trinity, in terms of some of the nuance between other doctrines, I mean, even some of the basic models like, classical theism versus open theism. I do think he sort of chameleons around, and like, this is sort of tough because a part of me, like, at one time he said, I don't like to say I'm a part of any denomination. Like, I actually respect that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, in some degree, I do think it's sort of a good thing to try and not associate with just go extreme in one corner, But at the same time, if the positions you're holding in one or the other sort of defeat each other, well, then now I feel like, okay, you're not really being clear, and as a content creator, people want to know what you believe, right? They want to see somebody who is consistent, right? And presents something that, has no holes. And we're certainly all humans. Man, I hope the best for IP, and I hope his channel and all the good work he does continues to grow. I totally have no like ill will towards him, but yeah, I think this is one of those things where he does kind of chameleon on some of these topics, and it's sort of hard to really pin down exactly what he thinks,
Yeah, I agree with you too. He does do a lot of good work, but I also think too, like, he picks and chooses who he wants to like debate. Like, he would have no problem taking up a debate with, like you said, defending the gospels, defending the authority of the scriptures, and like how the Bible is reliable and how the Quran isn't, stuff like that. He will argue with atheists, but he will also argue with them like regarding the Trinity. He'll bring up the bad arguments, but if he would never debate someone like you or me or like another Unitarian like Dr. Dustin Smith or Dr. Taylor Tuggy or Dr. Stephen Nemish regarding the doctrine of the Trinity, because I think like he would be caught with his pants down per se. Like, he would be exposed, and it'd be more ammo for the Muslims and the atheists and the anti-missionaries, like who he goes against. But like, I agree with you though. Like, just like there has to be some identity to it. Like, again, you believe in the Trinity. Why? Because it says so in the ecumenical councils. Okay, so then if you're allowed to pick and choose what ecumenical councils you follow, why can't Mike and I as Unitarians? It's just the dishonesty. But
yeah, I hear you, and I don't know whether he would accept debates with people like us or not.
He wouldn't.
I don't know. Hard to say. Again, I totally wish him the best. I think he's done a bunch of great work. But yeah, it's tough. It's frustrating at times when he's like responding to your videos. And he actually says in his other video, when I question him on divine simplicity, he's like, I didn't say what I think about divine simplicity. And I'm like, that's the problem. Like, but
yeah, you're not being clear.
Yeah.
So, all right, we'll go on to this inception thing.
Okay.
Maul is distinct from Cobb, yet she has full access to his mind and thoughts. So you have one mind who is two persons. Now, mostly when I bring up these analogies, non-Trinitarians just mock them, in part because they don't read a lot of philosophy and know that philosophical concepts often rely on thought experiments and analogies. But also,
Mike, he's talking about us. He knew we were going to do a video in response to this, and he wanted to just back up everything that he was going to claim. He's like, I know there's going to be some Unitarians out there. They're going to mock this, mock what I'm saying, mock my philosophy. I laughed when I saw that, because I'm like, oh, he knows I'm going to make a video.
Yeah, again, like maybe he'd have some grounds to say this if he wasn't also calling you a heretic, which is the same as saying you're not a Christian and you're going to hell. But no,
Yeah.
if he wants to take such hard positions, well then we're going to call out the fact that your receipts are not perfect representations, like you would say. Yeah, your analogies fail. All right, therefore you have not solved the problem and are furthermore not justified in treating us as heretics, who aren't saved, or who are outside the grace of God, because we would just dare to question this doctrine.
Yeah, and I think he specifically says that, I think too, because he knows like there are going to be some Unitarians that will rebuttal his claims, but I also think he's just trying to like cover his bases too. Like, he knows everything he said in this video is complete crap. right? Like, I think he knows that they're not a good examples because you can't come up with any good examples, but
That's the point. It's a
yeah,
mystery. It's supposed to be. They lose their authority the moment you can understand it. You don't need them.
right. So, I just wanted to pause that real quick. I'll play it now.
It's good.
So because they misunderstand and assume I'm saying God is identical to Moon Knight or identical to Cobb from Inception. And that's not what I'm saying. These are analogies and by definition, not perfect representations of what you're trying to explain. They're merely ways to show that it's logically coherent for a mind to be multiple persons. Even though we cannot fully comprehend it, it's logically coherent for three persons to be one God and each be fully God.
Okay.
And that's because
Pause
we learn.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
First off, you notice how he just switched between three persons can be one mind and three persons can be one God. Okay.
Yeah.
So he is actually creating an equivalency between God and a mind. And he says in his other response that God is a mind. That's what he says. God is not a mind. The Bible doesn't say that at all. The Bible says that God is a spirit, a spiritual person who has a mind. In my response, I bring up a verse where it says, who has known the mind of the Lord? Right? The scriptures never say that God is a mind. That is a concept that derives from Greek philosophy, Greek religion, again, back to consubstantiality and, the Egyptian theology, Hermeticism, point blank. I have a book that I've read called Constantine in the Divine Mind, because that was a religion competing for popular opinion at that time, at the time of Constantine. Hermeticism, the divine mind. Anybody who studies that period of history knows that. So the scripture doesn't say that, but certainly their pagan religions did. And you just see him just weaving in and out of these concepts like these are fluid with the scriptures, and they're not. They're totally not.
Yeah, it's when we talk about even person, I brought this up in one of my debates that I had with a guy. I brought up like what exactly is a person, and it's frustrating because a person is always identified as a human being, right? It's never as this thing of an essence or a will or anything like that. So even with that, it's always unclear. But yeah, I noticed that too, right where he says, just as Moon Knight. Well, before that, he even brings up like how no example is exactly equivalent.
Perfect representation.
So why you bring it up? Like, again, we know things can be either 2 in 1, 3 in 1, 4 in 1, a husband and a wife, the Star Wars trilogy. Okay, Planet of the Apes just came out with 4 of them now. We understand that. We have no problem with that. But to then say it's God, well, then it's you're still defeating the purpose, and you're just
of even bringing it up.
So, but I'm gonna
that was a subtle bait and switch there. Thanks for stopping. That's a key difference.
God
is not a mind.
Let me back this up a hair. Oops, how about right there?
Fully comprehend it. It's logically coherent for 3 persons to be one God in each.
And again, this is more of a like the philosophical like thing behind it, where as we see, a husband and wife coming together and they are like one flesh, even though like, again, it's not one flesh, but it's a philosophical mind frame of it's possible in a philosophical mind frame, but like anything is possible in a philosophical mind frame. You know what I mean? Like if you're that's why, again, in Colossians chapter 2, verse 8, like be warned and do not be like turned away from philosophies of men. Stick to what the Messiah said, and this is Paul's warning for us to where, and that can be applied even to this day. So don't just give into different philosophical ideas and just go with it just because someone's going to call you a heretic online and try to make you feel bad. Like, what did the Messiah say? Did he allude? He says, to my God and to your God, to my Father, to your Father. Just as Mike, you and I, we have the same God, we have the same Father. Guess what? We have the same God and Father that also Jesus has. So it just says our relationship is to God, how we are not equal to God. We serve him. We do his will, not our own will. Jesus does the same thing. So again, Paul is doing this callback of do that, not this whole philosophical thing of, yeah, there's no perfect analogy, but it's quite possible God can be 3 in 1. And as he says in the beginning of the video, denying it is heresy though,
Yeah, not fair.
Yeah, not exactly. Let me play this.
Be fully God. And that's because we learn in philosophy of mind that mental things do not have the same aspects or parameters as do physical things. For example, you could say that you're an agent in your mind, but you are still fully your mind. Your thoughts are not a part or section of you. It's not like they take up 30% of the space in your mind. You are fully your thoughts, but you could still see yourself as an agent distinct from your own thoughts. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of the complexity of the mental world. We could say things like, I'm hard on myself. How could I be hard on myself? I am one agent, but I'm speaking about myself as if I'm two. And so,
I pause. Okay, number one, none of these examples are akin to the Trinity. None of them.
Yeah.
Okay? Like when we are speaking of ourselves as two, we know we are not actually two. We are not two persons because I say I'm hard on myself. Not am I a benity in my personhood now? Like this is just more to me. This is like deceptive rhetoric. Okay, none of these things are analogous to the Trinity. Okay, and all of these examples of the philosophy of mind, okay, equate to mystery. Okay, it's really the full stop. That's what he's doing. He's just appealing to mystery, right? He gives these examples that don't really make sense, right? And then he's just going to sum that up with philosophy of mind to come sweep that dirt under the rug, right? No, okay. It's not akin to the Trinity. And quite frankly, mystery is not evidence. Mystery cannot be falsified. Therefore, an appeal to mystery loses this debate. And I know this is about to end here. I just want to say the last thing here is that, I think one of the highest callings we have as human beings is to know God. Truly. But if God is so confusing, the knowledge of God is so complex, I think this overcomplication seeps into our ability to have a healthy relationship with God. If God is obscured, then our relationship becomes obscured. We also are made in the image of God. To know God, and largely, is to know yourself. If your understanding of God, right, is convoluted because you have to just sort of put your faith and trust in the authority of the Holy Catholic Church, okay, don't be surprised when your own sense of self becomes convoluted as well. And I mean, even if none of that was true, you shall know them by their fruits. You will know if this doctrine is good or bad by the fruit it produces. And the fruit of this doctrine is division, it's divide, it's pride, okay, which I think is all unnecessary. It's unjustified. I think the fact that some people's very lives were on the chopping block, literally at times, because of purely conceptual differences tells you everything you need to know. Right, that I do not think that represents the intent of the Messiah, what he wanted to accomplish. Okay, and what he wanted the apostles to accomplish. I don't think it was this special, sophisticated knowledge about the Trinity. I don't. I really think it was about how we lived, how we ought to really to keep the Torah the way it always was meant to be. which is
Yeah.
in faith through the Messiah. I really think that that's the message. And that's the message of the gospel. The gospel is about the kingdom. We believe that Yeshua is going to come back and rule the world. What standard is he going to rule by? Okay, it's got to be the Torah. And so everything points towards that. We are in practice mode right now to seek to be more like the Messiah for the kingdom we believe is coming. Okay, and all of this philosophy of mind gets in the way.
No, yeah, I totally agree with you. This example of, well, for one, like I've been called like Mr. Agency, like that's my biggest thing. And I always talk about agency. I have a video, I'm actually going to redo it. I've found more examples, more stuff like that. As soon as he said agency, it kind of annoyed me because it's like, that's not agency. For you to say to yourself, oh, why did I do this? That's not agency. And again, that's not even two minds. You're not addressing yourself. All you're saying is, I can't believe I did something like that. Like, look, we can look back on our lives as kids. Like dad says, don't touch the stove. We touch the stove. We can look back and like, boy, why did I do that? Not as in there's two persons within Will. There's the 9-year-old Will who didn't listen to his dad and touched the hot stove and burned himself and had to go to the ER and everything like that. And now 31-year-old Will is like, oh, well, 9-year-old Will, why did you do that? Oh, I don't know. I didn't listen to him because I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Well, you should have. Like, that's not going on in my mind. I am reflecting on a past thing that I did. Like, okay, when God like says, I have regretted making humanity and everything like that, he's looking on a past thing that he has done, not this. Hey, God the Son. Oh, yes, God the Father. Yeah, you know what? I screwed up by making these people. Oh, yeah, you did. And then God the Holy Spirit's like sitting in the back, just eating popcorn and just watching everything unfold. That's not how it. That's not what's going on. And his example of saying we're designating ourselves to be our own agent. That's not what an agent is. And it's this example he gives. It's still not even two. We're not two persons within us. Even if we look back and think about an action that we did, like, sure, you might yell at your son for doing something stupid. You can think to yourself, was I too hard on him? Should I have yelled at him, or should I maybe just have talked to him and said, hey, we don't do this. Mm-hmm. You're still one person. You're reflecting on your action. Yeah. It's not, you know what I mean?
Oh, completely. Yeah, 100%. And another problem here too is that, whenever he's appealing to philosophy of mind, that in tandem for IP, you can find this in his content, is in fact the denial of classical logic as well.
Yeah.
So like even the concepts we use to form opinions about how we treat ourselves or how we speak of ourselves, like all that what's the word, metaphysics. I should know this, right? No, it's all that metaphysics really is not founded in something that can be verified through classical logic. So even if what he's saying is true, it's still appealing to, again, a mystery. And to me, it really reminds me of what I've learned about Gnosticism. Like the Gnostics believed that they had like hidden secret knowledge. That's what philosophy of mind, where not even classical logic, is valid. Like that's what that sounds like to me. Right. It's like this higher knowledge where just, it's like, it's wow. Like it's so spacey, dude. It's, I don't think that it lines up. It's fruitful. It helps at all. Understand God. Understand ourselves, how to live our lives, the doctrine of the Trinity, you name it. It just doesn't help.
But you need it. Yeah, like who cares? You can go cheat on your wife. But as long as you believe in the Trinity, though, you're gonna get into heaven.
Oh man, the people in his comments, so just eat it up. Eat it up. Just wow, like man, you destroyed that Unitarian.
Yeah,
it's crazy, dude.
But none of them want to have a discussion or a formal one-on-one debate.
He tried. IP went live like once.
Oh yeah, and then even Danny went up. Danny
yeah.
destroyed him on the Trinity, man.
Well,
Oh,
yeah. Well, Danny was
so
the one who got him to basically get to the fact that he just denies classical logic. That was
yeah,
a huge win for Danny
yeah.
for sure.
All right, I'm gonna play. I think we're at
Yeah,
like
this is the ending.
yeah, I think we have like 20 seconds left.
Because God is a mind, not something physical that has to take up space or be composed of parts. And because we already have logically coherent examples of how a mind could be multiple persons, there is no reason to think the triune God is logically incoherent. And more importantly, the scriptures and the early church taught that there is one God, yet there are three distinct persons who are each fully God. And so denying the Trinity is heresy for Christians.
Yeah,
There you go.
even though my examples aren't perfect representations, and we can just crutch on philosophy of mind where you don't even need logic. Obviously, there's no reason to think the Trinity isn't coherent. Like, okay, dude, okay, all right, that's what you can't defeat that, can you?
It's a springboard at the end of the day. So it man, and he still goes back to the Moon Knight example. Again, he's going back to wasn't Inception? That's what the movie was, right? Inception.
He mentioned
Wasn't that a
Inception.
novel? Or
I don't know.
okay, but still, it's he the only examples he can pull up, and like you brought up, which is funny. Like he brings up a comic book, and then he brings up a movie.
Yeah, that was a crazy summary.
So
Give him props for taking a stab at it. Don't think he did a good job. Again, I think that some of these things are really detrimental to us as believers. I don't think they result in any good. But yeah, he responded, and I appreciate the attention as well. That's nice to have IP respond to one of your videos because he's such a large creator, you know. And yeah, I totally wish him the best. And again, I think he's done a bunch of great work on other stuff. And yeah, thanks for having me on, Will, to go ahead and review this again.
yeah, I mean, I really wanted to, because as soon as he goes into it's not heresy to use it as a springboard. I'm like, dude, that is such BS. And I know you responded to this, but I wanted to bring you up so we can just kind of have our thoughts go back and forth. But yes, brother, thanks for coming up. And guys, please go subscribe to Metaphysics Mike on YouTube, because your channel is now growing, dude. I'm glad you're like coming on the YouTube platform, man.
Well, thanks. Glad to be here doing my best.
All righty, y'all. I will see y'all in the next one. Shalom.